In the 1970s and 80s, the petrochemical companies, among which is Royal Dutch Shell, have bought up virtually every seed company on planet Earth. So now when you get a seed catalog and it says Northrop King, it's a corporation that's held by the master holding company, Royal Dutch Shell. And Shell Oil is the largest supplier of seed on planet Earth, followed by Arco, Standard Oil, Exxon, Mobil, and Tenneco. Now, why would the big oil companies want to control the seed? I mean, it sounds like it's kind of a preposterous business adventure. But remember, the hybridized seed are dependent upon tremendous amounts of irrigation, chemical fertilizers, and pesticides. And what do the big chemical companies produce? They produce the fertilizers and the pesticides. So it's in their interest to have everybody planting hybridized seed. It's just a marketing program. But the uniformity that is created from these monocultures spells disaster. And those of you that have been raised perhaps with a little Bible instruction, do you remember the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? Do you remember the pale horse, the one that deals with famine? Well, do you see what's beginning to happen on planet Earth? We'll start now with the 1970s and the miracle rice that was taken from the development in the United States over to the Philippines, Japan, China. They took it over there, and it requires a tremendous amount of irrigation. So now you've got to irrigate the stuff, and you've got to chemically fertilize it. And those countries do not have the wherewithal to buy the chemical fertilizers from the have countries, and so now these third world countries are upside down. And what brought the bankruptcy was the use of these hybridized seed. Hybrids are profitable because the farmer or the gardener must return yearly to the seed company for more seed, whereas he could save the seed of a standard variety. While hybrid corn is often markedly more productive, standard tomatoes and peppers may be a little different from their hybrid counterparts. We've tested 1,000 or so different hybrids, but none of these are equal to the best standard varieties of tomatoes, says Dr. Ernest Kerr of the Simcoe, Ontario Research Station. Genetic wipeout puts the whole food system at risk and places first and third world farmers in the hands of just a few multinational agrochemical and petrochemical companies. Royal Dutch Shell has become the world's largest seed and agricultural supply company. The catalog is inspired by commercial interests and is intended to clear the European market for patented varieties. These are issues which cannot be trusted to the profit motive. If you control the seed, the beginning of the food system, you can control the entire system. The government has no right or reason to turn over control of the Canadian food system to multinational agrochemical companies. And Bob Berglund, the Secretary of Agriculture, the prediction that by 1991, 3/4 of all vegetable varieties grown now will be extinct may prove to be correct. Obsolete varieties are being replaced by improved varieties adapted to extended areas of agriculture. In a letter from Senator Frank Church, who introduced the Senate amendment, there is absolutely nothing in this legislation which would make it against the law to grow garden vegetables. Neither does this legislation have anything to do with promoting uniform varieties of plants. The legislation bears no resemblance to what is done overseas. Plant variety protection has worked to protect the new varieties developed by the small seed companies against exploitation by bigger seed companies. The result of the 1970 Act have been beneficial. The numbers and types of varieties of plants have expanded. Competition to breed new seeds has apparently increased. Be assured that I would not introduce legislation to outlaw certain seeds, banish backyard gardens, or force genetic uniformity and hand over big profits to a few seed companies. That's what Senator Frank Church had to say when he introduced the legislation in the United States Senate. Since 1972, fully 90% of the seed companies of the United States have been taken over by the multinational agrochemical companies. Rothschilds. That's a Rothschild operation. There have been 42 companies, public and private enterprises, that have been involved in soybean breeding in the United States since 1970. Of those 42 companies, 25 had programs prior to the passage, had applied for their patents very quickly after the bill passed, and everybody says that it takes at least 7 or 8 years to develop a new variety. So we assume that all of the applications prior to 1977, in fact, were passed on research before the bill was passed. How many of those companies are still plant breeding out of the 42? Well, 15 of the 25 that were plant breeding in the beginning of the 70s aren't there anymore. They've canceled their programs out of the new ones that have come into the market. They new only in the sense that they applied for their first patent in 1977. Half of those new ones haven't done anything since 1980. In fact, if you look at it, and I've looked at each major crop in the United States, you're going to see a drop-off in every major crop that has been patented since the beginning of the program. That is called monopoly. That's what multinationals do, and that's what patents do. Patents are simply a way in which you can carve up your turf, declare your territory, and keep the little guys out of it. Patents are a barrier to entry for small countries, and they're the way that multinationals divide up their market shares, and that's what's happening in the seed business.